Good morning, everyone. Let's read our poem for today. We are looking at the poem, The House by the Side of the Road. As we read the poem, we're going to be thinking about what message that we're hearing from the poem. All of our poems this week have been about roads and relating that to the journey of life. So we will continue on with that theme and discussing how the speaker in our poem today is going through his journey of life. So again, the title is The House by the Side of the Road. You can see there in the image, it looks like a house. There's your road. It looks like a nice, pretty day around some farmland, maybe. And the speaker has something to say about living by the road and what he is noticing. So please listen carefully as we get ready to read, and then I'll go over some of the words that you may or may not know, and then we'll reread it again. Here we go. Let me live in a house by the side of the road where the race of men go by, the men who are good and the men who are bad, as good and as bad as I. I would not sit in the scorner's seat nor hurl the cynic's ban. Let me live in a house by the side of the road and be a friend to man. I see from my house by the side of the road, by the side of the highway of life, the men who press with the ardor of hope, the men who are faint with the strife. But I turn not away from their smiles nor their tears, both parts of an infinite plan. Let me live in a house by the side of the road and be a friend to man. Right now that we have read the poem once, let's go back over some words so we have better understanding of what the poem is actually saying. So let's take a look at line 5 where it says, I would not sit in the scorner's seat nor hurl the cynic's ban. You can actually look down here below where it will show you, after my thing will go away, it says, sit in the scorner's seat, think bad things about other people. So that's what he means by I would not sit in the scorner's seat. He's not going to think bad things about other people, nor hurl the cynic's ban, meaning say mean things about other people. So he's not going to be judging others to talk bad about them or think mean things or say mean things about other people. He just wants to live in a house by the side of the road and be a friend to man. So the speaker is really looking for a friend. And he says, I'll be a friend to man. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we continue. If we look in stanza 2, where it says, by the side of the highway of life, that really comes to mind as we've been talking about roads and being similar to the journey of life. So that's where he is referencing the highway of life being like a journey. The men who press with the ardor of hope. So ardor, when we look at ardor, we're thinking of maybe strong or positive energy. When he uses that line, the men who press with the ardor of hope, meaning people are pushing forward hopefully. They're trying to go through life in a hopeful manner. The men who are faint with the strife. So the word strife meaning angry or bitter disagreement. So if we reread it again, the men who press with the ardor of hope, the men who press forward with hope, and then there's men who are faint with the strife, meaning that they are angry. But I turn not away from their smiles nor their tears. So he's referring to the ardor of hope to people with smiles, and the men who are faint with the strife for their tears because they may be angry or upset or bitter about things going on in life. Both parts of an infinite plan, so a continuous plan. Let me live in a house by the side of the road and be a friend to man. So when we look at this poem again, as I read through, now you have a better understanding of where he's coming from. Making sure that we understand that he's not going to be judging others or speaking unkindly to them, and whether they are pushing forward and have a positive outlook on life or they are full of anger and bitterness, he still wants to be their friend and join them in their smiles or their tears, as he knows that the journey of life is infinite and is continuous on over and over. So let's take a look again. I'll read it one more time. Again, the title of the poem is The House by the Side of the Road. Let me live in a house by the side of the road where the race of men go by, the men who are good and the men who are bad, as good and as bad as I. So he's saying right there, there are good men, there are bad men, and even as himself, he's saying, I am also good and bad in certain ways. I would not sit in the scorner seat, nor hurl the cynic's ban. Let me live in a house by the side of the road and be a friend to man. So he's saying he's not always good, he's not always bad. So he's not going to judge others for the way that they are either. He just wants to be a friend to man. I see from my house by the side of the road, by the side of the highway of life, so the journey of life, the men who press with the ardor of hope, the men who are faint with the strife, meaning the men who press on and have a positive outlook, or the men who are more bitter. But I turn not away from their smiles nor their tears, both parts of an infinite plan. Let me live in a house by the side of the road and be a friend to man. Now, he often is referencing being a friend to man, but this is early writing. So, in early writing, people or authors referred to all types of humankind as man. So it's not saying that he only wants to be friends with men. It's just he wants to be friends with all types of people. But it was an earlier type of writing, letting you know that he would say, I want to be a friend to man. And he really just wants to be friends with any type of person. So you can look at the poem and identify different parts of his behavior, meaning that he knows that he's not always good, he's not always bad, and he knows all people are the same way. So he's not going to judge others in that way. And then when we look at the second stanza, he's talking about how he wants to be friends with all types of people who either are positive on the outlook of life versus the ones who maybe are a little bit bitter or upset about how things are going in life. But the infinite plan lets you know that this is a long journey and he needs a friend by his side to go along with this journey. So now let's look at our graphic organizer and plug in some pieces that will help us better understand our poem. All right, so now we're ready to complete our graphic organizer. I recommend you go ahead and put this in your notebook so that way you have a better understanding of the levels of meaning for the poem. To help you better answer your questions for the quiz that goes along with the poem as well. So here we go. What is the poem mostly about? What information are we getting from the poem as we have been reading it? So we know back in the poem, it talks about how he wants, it says, let me live in a house by the side of the road. He does repeat that more than once in the poem, but that's not really what it's mostly about. It's not about living in the house. It's about how he is really wanting to be a friend to man. So instead of looking at the first line of the poem, like you sometimes can do in paragraphs to find the main idea, we're actually going to look at the last line of each of the stanzas as he repeats this part. It says, and be a friend to man, and be a friend to man. He goes through each of the stanzas and tells you how he would be a friend to a man, or it could be a woman as well. But remember, this is set back in the writing where he referred to all humankind as man. So when we're looking at our main idea, it says, and be a friend to man. That's what we're really looking at the speaker and how he wants to be a friend to all people. So go ahead and add this into your notebook. He wants to be a friend to all. Now we're ready to look at the life lesson. So as you are writing, you can pause the video and then restart it when you're ready to add the next part. So what kind of life lesson can we take away from this type of poem? And it's not straightforward into the theme, but we want to think about how he is treating others within the poem. So we know that he mentions whether the men are good or bad, comparing himself to not also being good or bad. And then he would not judge them. He would not criticize them. And then he goes on to say that he would join them with their smiles or their tears. So really, it seems to me for that life lesson that he wants to treat all people with kindness, just like you would want to be treated as well. kind of goes along with the saying, treat others the way you would want to be treated. It's very similar to that thought process. So now let's think about how the speaker might be feeling, because as he shares on his journey, on his highway of life, and he says, "Where the race of men go by," he's just where the journey, like the race, like you're running a race to the finish line. He's really referencing all the different types of people that go by in your life, whether they be people who are good or bad, people you get along with or not. So we want to think about how the speaker is feeling in this part of our poem and how he plans to treat others. So I really like in stanza 1 where he says, "I would not sit in the scorner's seat nor hurl the cynic's ban," meaning that he is not going to say mean things about other people or think bad things about other people. So once again, it kind of ties into that treating people with kindness, and we know he wants to be a friend to all. So his feelings about that is the speaker is eager to be friends with all kinds, whether good or bad. Okay. And now we're ready to talk about our theme. Again, you can pause the video to complete your graphic organizer in your chart as we are getting ready to discuss the theme of the poem. So remember, when we think about theme, we are thinking about that message that we're getting. How does that relate to our life? And I really like thinking of themes sometimes as character traits as well. And I think about even our Lincoln Charter's mission and how we use that in our everyday lives, especially when we're here at school. But I think it's really important as we look at it for our own, our poem as well, because it is how you can relate it to your life. And that's really what the theme represents. So we want to remember that it is important. It is important to treat people with compassion and respect. Whether they're good or bad, or you agree or disagree with them, you still want to treat them with respect, that kindness and compassion. Those are two very important character traits, and respect is one of our community expectations, and compassion kind of ties along with empathy too. So I like how it's referenced throughout the poem. Again, talking about the road, comparing that to be your journey of life, and treating people the way that you would want to be treated is what you should really be taking away from your poem. So make sure that you guys have an opportunity to add this into your language arts notebook. Once you've added your graphic organizer into the language arts notebook, then you'll be ready to answer your questions completely. If you have any questions, let me know. Have a great day, guys.